Welcome on in to Press Coverage, where we help you gain an edge in fantasy football. I'm your host, as always, Wyatt Bertolone, and tonight with me is my boy Herms from FTN, and we're going to be talking about some of the biggest storylines for fantasy football. Herms, how are you? What have you been working on?
I'm doing well. I'm doing pretty well. Just been working on a bunch of articles and stuff. Got a lot of stuff going up over there at ftnfantasy.com. And then I have a podcast that I do twice a week with one of our boys, Mr. Tyler Roginski, called the Crossing Routes Podcast.
Friend of the show.
Pretty fun. Yeah, dude. Just wonderful to be able to work with him. You know, keep all my content tight with the homies. You know, it's a good way to be. It's really fun.
I've been enjoying the Crossing Routes oh my gosh, podcast. It's a nice, tight, informative episode that comes out twice a week now. Am I correct? Twice a week?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I've really been enjoying that show. So everybody, if you're not listening to it yet, I encourage you to check it out. But we've got some off-season storylines to talk about. And the first one, I mean, you're a Steelers fan. I had to talk about Aaron Rodgers with you here and bring that off right off the bat here. So he finally signs a contract with the Steelers after all the hoopla that went on throughout the offseason. 1 year, $13.65 million contract. There's some incentives built on there, but almost all those incentives are like playoff wins, Super Bowl, stuff like that. Now, Aaron Rodgers, last year, not that great. 15.7 points per game. The year before that, obviously, he had the Achilles injury. Year before that, even worse, 14.8 points per game. What do we make of what Aaron Rodgers even does for this offense? And, do we want to invest in Aaron Rodgers at all in any way? Do we want to invest in his receivers in any way? His running back, how are you feeling about what this offense is going to be like with Rodgers?
Okay, I'm first going to answer this question as Herms the football fan, because Herms the football fan is actually using this opportunity to abandon rooting for the Steelers this year. I've already converted to the Washington Commanders. I got a hat, I got a sweatshirt, everything. I'm living in the DC area. I rooted for them as a kid too, so whatever. I'm not going to root for him. I can't do it, but we don't have time to discuss those reasons why. But the fantasy football guy, the analyst Herms, how I feel about it, it's better than Mason Rudolph. Okay, that's at least probably true. Probably true, not definitively true, because last we saw Aaron Rodgers, he wasn't super great. And honestly, Mason Rudolph, the few I want to say it was 5 games he started for the Titans last year, Calvin Ridley was pretty good. I think he was the wide receiver 23 or 24 or something. I mentioned it in an article however long ago. But it helps DK Metcalf theoretically. I think it makes him viable in a way that I could be excited about him at a wide receiver 3, ADP price tag or something in redraft. But that's about it, dude. I don't think this helps anyone else. Pat Freiermuth is still just going to be the weird question mark that he always is, that maybe has 3 good games if we're lucky. The running backs are going to be fine because Arthur Smith is just such a huge fan of pounding the rock no matter what.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fine, I guess. That's how I would describe it. Aaron Rodgers equals fine, I guess.
Yeah, I'm with you that the running backs, I'm still interested in them. We know that running game is going to be good, and they have 2 defined roles, Caleb Johnson, Jaylen Warren, in roles that we can project pretty easily and get excited for. The passing game worries me. We already know that Arthur Smith runs a slow-paced offense because of the amount of running he likes to do. Aaron Rodgers is one of the slowest-paced quarterbacks we've ever seen in the NFL. I also don't think they mesh well as QB and play caller. Aaron Rodgers is someone who tends to like to improvise on the line a little bit, and it seems like Arthur Smith is someone who is not a fan of that personally. He also runs a ton of play action. Is Aaron Rodgers' Achilles in a point in which he can consistently run that play action and those rollouts? I don't know. So DK Metcalf, I could get excited about him as the only guy in town, but he's kind of expensive right now. Expensive enough that I'm not that interested. Pat Freiermuth, again, probably the second option, so there could be some excitement for it. His price, a little bit more palatable, so I don't mind getting some exposure there. But just kind of in general, that passing game just worries me.
Yeah, it's going to be goofy. The other part that I'm not really sure about is who the second receiver is. I think
Yeah.
some of the
Who knows?
early buzz has been talking about Calvin Austin, like having it just be like his job to lose more or less. But
Yeah.
I still think Roman Wilson's pretty good, man. Like the fact that he just got hurt so often last year and never made it onto the field. I don't think it's like he showed up and everybody just all of a sudden hated him and no one wants to be his friend anymore and everybody wants him off the team. It's like, no, I just don't like it. It's hard to get opportunity when you're not healthy. So like I think maybe that I guess could be like the fun X factor if like that could be the thing that elevates the offense. But like I'm really grasping at straws to even find any reason to be excited. So
Yeah, you're right. Like, there's really not much after DK Metcalf to get excited about. Kevin Austin, hit some flashes, caught some deep balls, made some plays, and I think he could probably do that again, but not at a high volume. And Roman Wilson, yeah, I mean, that one sucks. I had some excitement for Roman Wilson. That was a prospect that like a lot of people really liked coming into the NFL. And yeah, just nothing going because of those injuries and whatever was happening for him to really not be able to get on the field. When those players have rookie years like that, normally that means we're done here. Like, it's kind of when rookies have that bad a year, no matter how it happens, it's usually kind of a death knell for them because whether it's you can't get on the field because you're bad or you can't get in the field because of injuries, if you're not getting enough practice reps and time with those players to really catch on in the NFL, and those players just kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes. So I don't know, I don't know, but none of these things inspire confidence in this passing offense.
it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot, and it's going to be just sure we're going to get some stellar quotes in press conferences, and I'm sure it's going to be a real hoot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. Speaking of hoots, Stefon Diggs certainly caused a hoot nanny when he showed up on a party boat this offseason. And, Stefon Diggs has been one to be in the news occasionally for things off the field for one reason or another. Never really affected his play, though, that kind of thing. It's kind of just like one of these things that gets talked about, but it's never really impacted his play on the field. He's had a really good career, but then last year, his first year with the Texans, he tears his ACL. This offseason, signs a pretty lucrative contract with the Patriots, 3 years, $63.6 million for this contract. If you look at it, like there aren't outs to this. This is a 3-year, $63 million contract that he's going to get paid on because the Patriots had to pay to try and bring in a receiver into their offense, right? Seems like he's recovering very well from that ACL. He's out there in practice cutting, looking explosive, but he is getting up there in age. He is coming off this injury. Does he present any excitement for you with Drake May, presumably as his number one receiver?
Yeah, I just really like Drake May, and I really believe that he is good enough to be able to support somebody if the team provides him with a receiver of a certain caliber, and I think they did that. Like, even before he got hurt last year, what we saw out of Diggs in Houston, like he was balling, like
Yeah.
he wasn't quite balling to like the career peak that we've seen from him, but it was still like very respectable week in, week out, usable fantasy numbers and stuff. And like, if you're telling me we could potentially get that version of Stefon Diggs, maybe not the peak Buffalo Bills version, then like, yeah, that's absolutely going to work. There's definitely reason to be excited about this. And I also think that like, I don't know, the rest of the offensive ecosystem isn't super inspiring yet, but Hunter Henry, perpetually underappreciated. Hunter in the hen house. We love to see it. We love to hear him anytime his name gets announced on the broadcast because he's a guy that can do good things. He is a pretty underrated contributor. And I really like Kyle Williams, the rookie that they drafted. I don't know. I ended up with a pretty hefty amount of shares because he would just go like late enough in the second round of these rookie drafts that I was just like, yes, 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 yes. But I don't know. Ultimately, it's just I believe so much in Drake May and what we saw out of him, despite everything just being terrible around him last year, that like I'm weirdly bought into this whole thing. And also just like Mike Vrabel brings really good vibes.
Yeah. Speaking of Tyler Orginski, our friend and analyst also at FTN, when he was on our show, this is something we actually talked about a little bit after Stefon Diggs had signed with the Patriots. And we kind of agreed that we like this more for May than necessarily Diggs. Like, we're not necessarily in love with drafting Stefon Diggs this year, but we think it means a lot for Drake May. I've changed my tune slightly on that just because he does look fairly healthy out there. And Cal Williams, I'm excited for, but he is a rookie. Outside of that, Pop Douglas, I like, but he's not like a massive target earner. Hunter Henry, I like a lot, but again, not a massive target earner. Could Stefon Diggs get a good target share for Drake May, a quarterback who I think is very good and is ascending QB? Little bit of excitement for him. I'll say his price right now is fairly aggressive, for what he is coming up age, coming off ACL, all those things. But I kind of want to make sure I have a little bit of exposure to Stefon Diggs. But I do think like this whole, what they've done, including Stefon Diggs, is really just kind of raise the floor of this offense and Drake May. And maybe my biggest takeaway from this is what I've basically just been preaching every time I can this offseason is buy Drake May.
Yeah, no, dude, that's kind of the big lesson for all of this. And, I think by the time that this comes out, our latest episode of the Crossing Roads podcast came out. And so I mentioned this for a reason. Tyler and I did a redrafting of the 2024 rookie class, just back and forth, because we had done a series talking about
Very
these
cool.
second-year guys. And I was surprised when he picked Caleb Williams over Drake May in our little draft that we did. And that just caused me, I took May with my, immediate next pick and then went into a rant about the whole thing. And it's just like the rushing floor is so nice. Like he's more of a scooter than a runner per se, but he still can get enough of those points to give you the extra 3.5, 4 points a week that you would love to get out of your quarterback. And the ecosystem, just like you said, the floor just being that much higher is so nice. It's so, and I don't think people have quite given it the credit that it deserves yet. And like the fact that he's still relatively affordable is just reflective of that. So yeah, like there's this window for Drake May shopping is still very much open, folks. I support this 1000%.
Love to hear it. Love to hear you on my side on this, that we are just in on Drake May like crazy. I mean, that's the takeaway here for me about Stefon Diggs is that I just love Drake May.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, we're going to take a quick moment to hear about the FFPC, and when we get back, we're talking Browns quarterbacks.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
Back on press coverage with Herms, and we're on to Browns QBs. All right, so a lot to get through here. First, Deshaun Watson, obviously injured, torn Achilles. Probably not going to see him in a Browns uniform again. Might not see him in an NFL uniform again. We'll see. Then Joe Flacco, they signed this offseason, 1 year, $4.25 million contract. They trade for Kenny Pickett. They send away Dorian Thompson-Robinson and a 5th-round pick for Kenny Pickett. They draft Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, then draft Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round of the NFL draft. And essentially, it's a 4-man camp battle right now. Everybody's getting some reps. We're trying to figure out what's going to go on here. I have to imagine that Joe Flacco is first up on this offense. I imagine he's going to start the season at QB, basically regardless of how this QB battle goes. I think someone would have to really blow everyone else out of the water to beat out Joe Flacco to at least start the season. I wouldn't be surprised if all of these QBs see the field at some point. My bet, if I had to bet on someone starting the most games, it'd be Flacco. But my second person I bet on is Shedeur Sanders. Kenny Pickett, I'm not sure what he's really doing for this offense. Like, I think they just wanted to make sure they had some bodies in this room going into the NFL draft because they weren't sure what was going to happen there. They draft Dylan Gabriel because this was obviously a QB they liked. If they drafted him in the 3rd round, he wasn't expected to go that highly. And then Shedeur Sanders is an interesting one where he's falling throughout the draft, and at least part of his fall is due to the off-the-field stuff that we were hearing all through the offseason. But this is also a QB who is projected to go pretty highly for a really long time. Yeah. I have to imagine, okay, Shedeur Sanders, right? He obviously has a little bit of diva quality to his, or whatever word you want to use, to his personality and how he operates. But this is a guy who probably just got humbled a good bit by the NFL draft. I imagine he's walking into camp and putting his head down, getting to work. And like, this is someone who has some skills we like. I could see him, ascending through this camp battle through and into the season and possibly getting a chance and taking and running with it. Not necessarily that he's going to be really fantasy viable. I'm not sure about that yet, and we can talk about that. But what do you think is going to happen with these QBs?
I think you're right in assuming that Flacco is the favorite just because, like, why wouldn't he be? I mean, just in terms of the experience and just the only one of them that has like shown recent success at the professional level, obviously, because the rookies they're brand new, they haven't done it yet. But yeah, like at least on the veteran level, Flacco versus Kenny Pickett, pretty easy to I don't think anybody's like, oh please let it be Kenny Pickett the whole season. That's the perfect scenario. Like 0 people are saying that. I've said maybe Kenny Pickett's parents and his family, but that's like about it. Yeah. So Flacco definitely going to be cool, and I'd be really excited about that, especially because like last time we saw him with the Browns, like didn't David Njoku just go nuclear at like the end of that season?
The offense really did.
Like, yeah, dude, like that would be cool. It would be the best thing for the overall, fantasy output of everybody, I think. But yeah, if I was going to pick somebody else, I think I'm with you with the Shedeur thing. Like, I don't know the man. I have never met the man. I'm probably never going to meet the man. So, like, when it comes to all that stuff, like, I don't really have an opinion on what to think about him as a person. But whatever reasons he fell, like, it is what it is. It's over. But he's a baller. I watched a lot of the Colorado games just because I was kind of hyped about the whole Coach Prime thing. And, like, I get why people thought he was going to be selected a lot higher than he ended up going because, he doesn't have, like, this incredible transcendent arm talent or anything, but he was a pretty effective game manager and he was pretty quick at processing things most of the time when his offensive line didn't let him completely down and have him just get swarmed by an entire defense, because that did happen a lot. But it's going to be rough no matter what, though, just because it's not ideal really for any of them to be the answer for an entire season. But I hope we get some sort of shot with Shedeur at the very least, because I think it would have the opportunity to turn into the nicest real life story. And I also think just because, like, if he does come anywhere close to like his relative median outcome, relatively quickly, the fact that he's younger will kind of like help the overall floor of the offense, I think, just because he'll be able to move around and evade things more than Joe Flacco can. But I don't know. It's all pretty hypothetical at this point. We still have a long way to figure out what this team's going to be.
Yeah, I think probably best case scenario is that we get 2023 Joe Flacco offense that the Browns had again. We just talked about how good that was. He looked, I think, a little bit worse for the Colts last year, but still kind of the same general thing that he's going to drop back and he's going to chuck it, nonstop. What he's going to take a lot of risks, but he's going to make a lot of big plays happen too, because he's just going to go out there and try and make plays happen with his arm. He's not going to run. He'll check it down. He's going to release the ball pretty quickly, but he's going to go out there and throw a lot. But the second best case scenario, and there is an argument to be made that the possible actual best case scenario is that Shedeur Sanders rises to the occasion. And some of those skills that we saw in college translate now as he gets set into the game in the NFL and really starts to learn and get to work. I mean, I think he's honestly just a really great fit for Kevin Stefanski's offense. Like you said, like he doesn't have this like super transcendent arm or anything like that, but he's an accurate QB who can make the plays. And Kevin Stefanski has an offense that tends to scheme players open. And it's kind of a point and shoot, like Stefanski's telling you, here's where the play is going to go. And it's normally going to be open for you. You just got to make the play. You just got to make the throw. And I think he can do that. And he's also athletic. He does add that, little wrinkle to the offense. He's not necessarily a scrambler runner, but he is someone who can move around in the pocket looking to, keep the play going and find a receiver downfield. So like 95th percentile outcome for Shedeur Sanders is probably the best thing that can happen for this QB room. But I also think it's worth noting that there's a lot of bad that can happen here too, like across the board.
So much.
That can kind of crater the offense to an extent. Now, the saving grace to that is that Kevin Stefanski has run a lot of plays during his time with the Browns, especially over the last couple of years. He's not afraid to drop back and pass as much as possible. He even did it with Dorian Thompson-Robinson last year. I believe Dorian Thompson-Robinson had a game with 47 attempts because Stefanski knows when you get down, he's okay with just dropping back as much as possible. We're trying to run as many plays as possible. So that is kind of saving grace there. But like, do you have worries that the QB situation is so bad that we don't actually like any of the players on the Browns offense?
I think if it's bad in so far as we see all of them, and like there's a guy who, you know, gets a string of starts early in the season, gets benched, and then comes back again, and then gets back. Like if it's one of those things where it's just never figured out and people are stepping over each other's toes, then like, yeah, that would be the scenario in which I would just be like, oh, I don't want anybody on this team because that lack of consistency. I mean, like, I don't know. It's not very often that, you know, regular human beings can relate to what football players go through. But like, just go to any job and like every single week, your coworkers just change. You know, like if that just happened to you every week for like 3 or 4 months in a row, it would be pretty hard to get into a group. Like that's kind of the scenario I'm envisioning in my head where like, I don't like Deontay Johnson and, you know, Jerry Jeudy and all these guys show up and they're like, you know, they see some sort of chalkboard where, you know, it's like this guy's starting this week. And they're like, what? Oh, but we just got used to that guy. We gotta come out. That would just be miserable, and I would hate to see that. But I think because there's 4 potential guys it could be, there is a much greater than non-zero chance that we get just this carousel, and I would hate it. I would just hate it.
Yeah, I think the only pushback I would have, because like I do think that it's possible, but we could still be okay with Njoku and Jerry Jeudy, who I'm big fans of for this year. I'm kind of always a fan of Njoku, but is that I think one, offense will be consolidated. The passing offense will be consolidated to them. And we saw the quarterback carousel last year. And we still liked having David Njoku and Jerry Jeudy in our lineups. Because it's Stefanski's offense, because he'll be fast paced and he'll run enough plays for them to get there. Like, it's going to be ugly. There were a lot of games last year that were ugly, you know, for this Browns offense and some of our skill players on that offense, but they tended to get there. The ones we cared about tended to get there just because like sheer volume. So I'm like, maybe it's the Browns fandom in me that is saying I don't think like the bottom completely falls out just because it's Stefanski, but that's kind of where I'm at.
That makes enough sense. I mean, I can see the arguments for and against for all that. They're an interesting team, honestly. Like I am going to be more fascinated about them than like a good chunk of the league this year. It is going to be so fun to watch it all unfold.
Fun is one way to describe it. Another fun thing that's happening right now is the Colts QBs. Now, Anthony Richardson, been in the NFL for 2 years. He's played just 15 games as he's dealt with some injuries, including injury to his throwing shoulder, ended his first season in the league, and he's apparently still dealing with a shoulder injury on that throwing shoulder. It's causing him some problems. He went and got a second opinion. The second opinion was he'll be fine for training camp. I feel like anytime you go to get that second opinion, we're already starting off bad, you know, and that second opinion, I think, holds a little bit less weight than the first opinion did for me when I see these things happen, because once you have to go find that one, it means you're searching for someone to tell you something you want to hear. And that I don't love. Now, Daniel Jones signed here as well, 1 year, $14 million contract, which is that contract where it's like you're right in between starter money and like the best backup money at QB, which made sense for the Colts to sign that deal because they needed to put some pressure on Anthony Richardson, I think, because, I mean, frankly, he isn't there as a passer yet. For whatever reason, you know, is it the injuries? Is it he's just not capable? I don't know, but we all know he's not quite there as a passer yet. Incredible deep ball. We've seen the big plays. That week 1 pass to Alec Pierce, that we all know, the one where he's like pressure in his face, back foot, 60-yard bomb, right on the money. It's a beautiful thing. But all the easy throws he has troubles with. Now, Daniel Jones, kind of the opposite. You know, he's a dink and dunker. He's going to complete the short, easy passes and move the ball down the field. I think he's actually a little bit somewhere in between the quarterbacks they've had for the Colts recently, where he's a little bit like Gardner Minshew, where Gardner Minshew is just a dink and dunker, moving it down the field. But Daniel Jones also has a little bit of running ability to him, like Anthony Richardson. So the offense can kind of stay the same, what Shane Steichen's been doing. So one, The question is, if you're picking between these QBs, who you going with? And 2, what's up with the weapons for them?
I mean, I really wanted Anthony Richardson to be a thing. I wanted it so bad because, like, if everything clicked for him, he's got this just uber athlete, physical archetype that could be just like a modern Cam Newton and be like super fun for everything. But at this point, I think we have enough of a sample size to be reasonably sure that that's not going to happen. And also because I just want to quickly complain about something that we spent a lot of time complaining about in season last year. But like, why the Colts just benched him for like a couple games only to just go back to like just stunting whatever growth was happening. Like, why? You the 4th overall pick you spent on this guy.
They haven't handled it well.
Yeah, like I think if it doesn't work out, it's going to be a little bit his fault, I guess, for just not, being able to put everything together. But the organization's also going to be a lot at fault because of how they handled some of this stuff. And it's sad when it happens to quarterbacks. This is far from the first time we've seen an NFL team jerk around a young quarterback and kind of stunt their development. But, sometimes it works out for guys longer term. We occasionally get a Sam Darnold situation, but for the most part, it kind of is just the final stamp. But I prefer Daniel Jones. I think it's going to be a lot more fun for everybody involved if it's Daniel Jones. And I wrote about a while back some of my sort of favorite post-hype sleepers heading into this year. And I love Josh Downs. And one of the arguments that I made for Josh Downs was the fact that Daniel Jones has never had an adjusted completion percentage lower than 72.5%, which is pretty important considering that Anthony Richardson just had like one of the worst of those possible. Yeah. So like just going to a guy who can at least deliver a ball somewhat consistently is going to be good for Downs. It's going to be really fun for Michael Pittman Jr. I think he's a guy that honestly I just don't spend a lot of time thinking about. But then when I go to check like my Dynasty rostership, I'm like, wow, I actually roster a lot of Michael Pittman Jr. And like it would absolutely be the best case scenario for him because he was borderline useless whenever Anthony Richardson was in the lineup. So like I'm excited for them if we get like Daniel Jones being the league average quarterback he's been for most of his career, because league average quarterback play is enough for talented players to usually rise to a fantasy relevant level. I think anybody holding out hope for Anthony Richardson is, a bit, too far up that creek without much of a paddle. So, RIP to those dynasty rosters, including some of mine.
I'm with you. I think they botched Anthony Richardson a little bit. The Colts did. Mm-hmm. I think most people agree that he probably needed a little time coming into the NFL. He didn't get enough of that time, I think, to adjust and really work on his accuracy because I mean it is a problem. And then like the short-term benching last year was weird, and like I mean it worked for Bryce Young, but like that was really weird. Like that's the outlier. That's not the norm. Normally that's kind of something that's going to like really affect a player's confidence. But yeah, if we care about the weapons for the Colts, which I do, like I love Josh Downs. I think he's a great player. Michael Pittman's been pretty underrated for a while, honestly. Like I think Michael Pittman, people wanted more than what he was going to be, but once you like have the correct expectations for him, he's actually been pretty good. Last year playing with a broken back, I mean, you have to excuse last year at least a little bit. But if we care about those players, then we want Daniel Jones. That's just, it is what it is. Like he is clearly the better quarterback for the weapons. And I think that also is a big boon to Tyler Warren. With Anthony Richardson, one, maybe two pass catchers we could count on for anything. With Daniel Jones, there could be enough volume here that we care about 3 pass catchers on this offense. I think that's kind of exciting. Daniel Jones himself, not exciting. These weapons, a little bit exciting. Shane Steichen has done some good things in the NFL as a play caller and the offensive, crafter. So I think there's a little bit reason to be excited for the weapons with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, I mean, he has one good fantasy season under his belt where we really cared about him and we were happy to have him in our lineups. I don't know if we get that again, but I think he can be good enough to propel these weapons.
Oh, for sure. And like you said, if he could get back to that form, I mean, we haven't seen him do a ton of running since he tore. I think it was his ACL. It was that game like on the road in Arizona, however many years ago. Like he hasn't done it like as much as he used to, but like, yeah, I mean, working with a coach like Shane Steichen that could theoretically draw up some plays to be able to, draw on that physical acumen that he has to be able to do those things would be pretty fun. I guess it is possible, but I also think it says a lot just about how hard it is for NFL teams to find good quarterbacks because like each of the last two topics, the thing we're rooting for is like, could it just be league average? If they could just meet the minimum threshold.
Yeah. It's tough. There aren't 32 starting quarterbacks in the world, like they don't exist. It's tough.
Yeah, anybody that tells themselves that there are is just it's lying, and that's the really fun part about football. Like it's frustrating, but it's the really fun part is just being able to like, really determine it's like, well, do we actually have one of those guys? It also leaves some teams, kind of dedicating themselves to quarterbacks longer than they should, but that's a whole other conversation we could have for a different show. But
we could do another show about that one for sure. All right, we got one more topic here for everybody, and that's some Miami Dolphins, I would say, some bad vibes. It's kind of been going since throughout all of last season. Tua's been dealing with concussions, more than we'd hope anybody would have to. It's scary at times. Whenever he's out, this offense suffers greatly because Miami's not done a good job of finding someone to back him up. Going along with this, it's tough to find quarterbacks theme who we've got going on throughout this show. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's 2024 was straight up poor. Is Tyreek Hill on the downside of his career? Is Jalen Waddle ever going to return to form? Is this the offense not being able to do what it used to because is Michael McDaniel's offense being figured out? Is it just that the offensive line has been dreadful and they didn't do much to fix that? Devon Chan, we still loved him for fantasy because he was getting all those touches and all that receiving work we loved, but his efficiency cratered in 2024. Possibly that's just because of the offensive system and how he was being used. The point is, like, there's a lot of players on this team that we really like and we're excited for, and we used to love Mike McDaniel, but boy, there's question marks across the entire offense for me, and I'm having trouble getting too excited about the offense in general. Now, I'll say Jalen Waddle for me is the one where I've like still left the candle on and I'm getting excited about because I still think that talent is in there, and I don't think that went anywhere for him. I think that for him, at least, they had a lot of trouble getting it to him and Tyreek. But Tyreek also has this. He's getting old. He's dealing with wrist injury last year, which we don't really know how much that was affecting him. And I don't get a good vibe about him talking about how retiring early and the end of the season
about that.
At the end of the season being like, oh, he's going to leave the team, and then like walking in that back right after. Like the vibes there just are off for me. I'm rambling now about the bad vibes. I want to hear what you have to say about this offense.
The vibes are bad. I get it. And there's a lot of different reasons why. There's a lot of different angles you can go into. And I think the other thing that kind of worries me is was the fun that we got out of Jonnu Smith just like a temporary thing, Because if that could hold, that would be a really fun thing for us to look forward to in 2025 for the fantasy season as well. But if we're already worried about the main pieces of this offense, then some of these more secondary, cursory, pieces are definitely kind of in flux too. So I get that. And the guy I'm most concerned about is definitely Devon Achane. I mean, I think he's phenomenal. I think he plays with Madden 99 speed, and it's just one of the most unique cheat codes that an athlete can have in the game of football is just to be that much faster than everybody else. But the biggest thing that he had going for him was the fact that he didn't really share backfield touches with anybody. Even though the concerns with Tua being out of the lineup, everything sucked, but just focusing on, the games where he was super good, it was still basically just him handling those touches. Raheem Mostert didn't do anything. There wasn't really a second guy. So my biggest thing is we're looking at him as this top 12 option. He's being drafted as such. I get why. I think it would be ridiculous to value him outside of the top 12, but at the same time, all it takes is for Jalen Wright or Ollie Gordon maybe, or the ghost of Alexander Madison to just like have enough of an impact to take away that volume that would go to HN. And if that happens, especially in like short yardage situations, and especially short yardage situations in the red zone and closer to the goal line, that's where I get terrified and really don't want to deal with him. So I wrote about him as an ADP fade for an article I did recently, HN that is. He accounted for 2/3 of all of their carries inside the 5-yard line last year, scored 5 of his 8 rushing touchdowns from within the red zone, and all 6 of his receiving touchdowns came from the red zone. So like a bulk of fantasy points came from him just being kind of the one-man show in that part of the field. If one guy takes away any of that, that touchdown regression is dangerously likely to just see the rug pulled out from under it and everything falls. And like that's where I get nervous. The pass catchers and stuff with Tua, like definitely a huge thing, but like if I just don't want to see this be a huge backfield split. I don't want anybody to come in and ruin it, but I think it's a more distinct possibility than people are giving it credit for.
Yeah, I'm mostly there with you on a chain actually. Beginning of the offseason, he was like on underdog. He was a 1-2 turn pick, and that was a bit rich for me at that point. He's fallen since then a little bit. Now he's closer to middle of the second round, sometimes late second round. At that price, it starts to get a little bit more palatable for me just because of we've seen him do 2 different things in the NFL that have been really great. We've seen the incredible efficiency, and we've also seen the workload consolidation where he's just kind of taken over the backfield and with that receiving work, which we love to see. Now, I think that they probably don't want to give him that amount of opportunities again. They probably want someone else to take a little bit of the backfield so we can get back to probably some of that efficiency in the past. As long as he keeps that receiving work, though, I feel pretty confident about him being someone we want on our teams. But it does kind of depend on Tua, because when Tua wasn't there, he was terrible. Didn't really matter that he was getting all the backfield touches because the offense wasn't moving. But when Tua's there, he's fantastic because he's getting all this receiving work. The offense is moving. They're getting in the red zone. I realize like it's probably sacrilegious to say like I'm less interested in Devon Chan, than maybe other people, but I am a little bit less interested in Devon Chan this year than other people.
It's like it kind of goes back to what I said in terms of like I get why he goes where he does in drafts. I can't really argue it. There's a reason why the price tag is there because like the upside is abundantly obvious. But yeah, I just look at his name whenever it comes around and I like contemplate how much I actually have to spend on it. And I just groan and I make a weird face and I'm like, like it just feels disgusting. Like I don't want to do it. The vibes are just that bad. It really is just that bad. So I don't know, man. They're going to be, oh my God, if anything happens to Tua, wouldn't the backup now be Quinn Ewers? Because Skylar Thompson went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he was like the guy that was there that was at least familiar with what was going on. So like, I think like that's another possible thing that if we really want to go full doomsday scenario with it, the guy that would be taking over for Tua now would be somebody who's really not familiar with the system, which was at least the case before. So like, oh man, the more we talk about this, the more I'm just not at all excited about Miami at all.
To possibly make you feel even worse, I guess actual backup at this point would be Zach Wilson, but Quinn Ewers, I mean, you'd probably hope that Quinn Ewers gets a shot if that's the case.
Bro, I forgot about Zach Wilson.
Lord.
Yeah. But that's
Miami
the point, fans
right? Like,
out there, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Well, I hate to end on a bad note, but this was a lot of fun, Herms. I enjoyed having you here. I'm really happy you joined me. Before we got here, please remind everybody where to find you, find your work, all those things.
Absolutely. You can follow me on the Twitter machine at ch_Herms. I am also on Blue Sky. That's where I'm a lot more active, where I am simply just at Herms. It's really easy, way easier. Wish I could get that handle universally across social media, but unfortunately can't. But you can find all of my written work and my podcast, the Crossing Routes podcast, all through ftnfantasy.com. That's pretty much it. There we go. That's Herms. Hey.
Love it. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at WyattB_FF. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to everything Player Profiler. If you're not on Fast Draft yet, you really should be. And if you aren't, sign up with code Wyatt for a first-time deposit match up to $50. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you later.